The woman scrubbing dirty dishes in the kitchen of the Moretti Grand Hotel owned every single marble tile beneath her tired feet. Nobody knew it. Her hands were red from the scalding water, her uniform was stained with grease that would never fully wash out, and the man she fell asleep beside every night was the most feared man in the entire city of Chicago. But tonight, in this kitchen, Sophia Moretti was nobody. Steam rose from the industrial sink in thick white clouds, wrapping around her like a curtain that separated her from the rest of the world. The kitchen roared with its usual chaos: knives striking cutting boards, pans slamming against burners, waiters shouting orders over the hiss of the grill. Yet around Sophia, there existed a strange pocket of silence. Nobody looked at her, nobody dared, because looking at her meant risking becoming Victoria Kane's next target. The general manager had marked the quiet new dishwasher from the very first day, the way a wolf marks the weakest animal in the herd. And in this kitchen, everyone had learned the same brutal lesson. When Victoria chose a victim, you kept your eyes down and thanked God it was not you. Everyone except Emma Carter. Emma worked at the dessert station just a few feet away, a young woman with flour on her cheek, and that nervous energy of someone who had not yet learned to stay quiet when she should. "Hey," she whispered without looking up from the delicate pastries she was decorating. "Don't let her get to you. She does this to all the new girls. She feeds on it." Sophia glanced at her from the corner of her eye. "I can handle it. That's what the last dishwasher said." Emma piped a perfect rose of cream onto a tart. "She lasted 9 days. You're on day 6. Sophia almost smiled. Almost. She lowered her hands back into the burning water and felt the thin silver band on her finger. Her wedding ring, turned inward, the diamond hidden against her palm, where no one could see it. It was a small thing, a quiet thing, but every time the hot water bit into her skin, she felt that stone press into her flesh like a secret heartbeat. A reminder of who she really was. A reminder of the man who had slipped it onto her finger 12 years ago, in a small church on the south side, back when he had nothing but his name and a promise. That name was now carved above the grand entrance of this very hotel. That promise was the reason she was standing here, invisible, scrubbing plates that cost more than a dishwasher's weekly salary because someone inside these walls was poisoning everything her family had built, and the truth only ever revealed itself to people it believed were powerless. "You know what's strange about you?" Emma tilted her head, studying her. "You scrub dishes like you're waiting for something, like you're watching." Sophia's hands went still in the water. Before she could answer, the swinging kitchen doors burst open with a violent crack against the wall. Every knife stopped cutting. Every pan stopped moving. Every spine in the kitchen straightened at once, as if the temperature of the room had dropped 10 degrees in a single second. The woman who marched in did not walk like an employee. She walked like an executioner. Victoria Kane crossed the kitchen with the sharp click of heels that everyone had learned to fear, and as those footsteps came closer, Sophia's mind slipped backward 3 weeks backward to the night the first letter arrived. It had come with no return address, no signature, just trembling handwriting on cheap paper. "They take half our tips. They threaten anyone who complains. Please, someone look at what is happening inside the Moretti Grand." Then a second letter, a third, each one darker than the last. Stolen wages, falsified invoices, and one sentence that had kept her awake until dawn. "There is money moving through this hotel that does not belong to any guest." She remembered Alessandro standing by the window of their penthouse, the lights of Chicago burning beneath him, his jaw tight with fury. "I'll send Marco," he had said. "I'll send 20 men. By Friday I'll know every rotten name in that building. And by Friday, every rotten name will know you're looking." Sophia had taken his hand. 20 men will find 20 locked doors, send a powerful person, and the guilty smile and hide. But a dishwasher? She shook her head slowly. Nobody hides from a dishwasher. Nobody performs for her. The truth only reveals itself to people it believes are powerless. He had fought her on it for 2 entire days. The most feared man in Chicago had argued, paced, and threatened to lock the hotel down entirely. And on the 3rd day, he had done the thing that made her love him more than any empire he had trusted her. The night before she left, he took her hand in the darkness of their bedroom and slowly turned her wedding ring inward, hiding the diamond against her palm. "Anyone can hide a stone," he whispered against her hair. "Nobody can hide what it means. One phone call, Sophia. Wherever you are, whatever hour it is, I am one phone call away. And if anyone in that building ever makes you afraid, they won't know what I am," she had answered. "Until the moment they need to." "Solano," Victoria's voice cracked through the memory like a whip. Sophia turned. The general manager stood before her, holding up a crystal glass to the light with 2 fingers, the way one might hold something contaminated. "Do you see this?" Victoria's voice carried across the entire kitchen, deliberately loud. A water spot on crystal that will touch the lips of the most important people in this city. "I'll polish it again," Sophia said quietly. "You'll polish all of them again. All 400 pieces." Victoria set the glass down and smiled, cold as a blade. "And when you finish, the grease traps under the main line need to be emptied by hand. The gala is tonight, and I want my kitchen spotless, even the parts of it nobody wants to touch." A few employees winced. The grease traps were punishment work, the filthiest job in the building. "Unless," Victoria leaned in, her perfume sharp and suffocating, "you'd like to complain?" "No, I thought not. Women like you never do. That's the one thing I like about you, Solano. You know exactly what you are." Sophia lowered her eyes, not in surrender, but the way a hunter lowers a rifle. Falsified invoices, stolen tips, and a manager terrified of anyone looking too closely. She memorized it all. Victoria had barely finished her sentence when the swinging doors opened again, but this time, they opened for a different kind of storm. The woman who swept into the kitchen carried an electronic tablet in one hand and a phone pressed to her ear with the other, her voice slicing through the clatter of pots and pans like a scalpel. "No, absolutely not. The orchid arrangements go on the donor tables, not the entrance. If I wanted mediocrity, I would have hired someone else. Fix it." She ended the call without saying goodbye and scanned the kitchen the way a general inspects a battlefield. Evelyn Brooks. Sophia recognized her instantly from the society pages, the most celebrated event planner in Chicago. The woman who organized galas for senators and billionaires, whose smile appeared in every charity photograph, and whose name opened doors that money alone could not. "The champagne service starts at 8 sharp, Evelyn announced to the room. "The auction begins at 10. If a single plate leaves this kitchen 30 seconds late, I will personally see to it that she stopped, mid-sentence, mid-breath." Her eyes had swept across the dishwashing station and locked onto Sophia. The pause stretched. 1 second. 3. 5. Something moved behind Evelyn's carefully painted expression. Something that crawled up slowly from a deep and buried place. Her head tilted, the way a bird of prey tilts its head at movement in the grass. "Well," she said softly. "Well. She walked toward the sink with slow, deliberate steps, her heels striking the tile like a countdown. "I know you." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, searching Sophia's face. "I've seen you before. Where have I seen you?" Sophia kept scrubbing, her heartbeat steady only through sheer force of will. "I doubt it, ma'am. People like you don't see people like me." Emma's piping bag went still at the dessert station. The whole kitchen seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn stared a moment longer, and then a slow, venomous smile spread across her lips, as if she had decided the answer didn't matter, because whatever memory was scratching at her mind, it had already curdled into contempt. "You're right about one thing," she said. "I don't." She turned to Victoria, and the two women exchanged a look, brief, silent, and heavy with something that had nothing to do with tonight's menu. It was the look of two people who kept the same secrets. "This one," Evelyn said, pointing at Sophia with one manicured finger. "I want her polishing the auction crystal, and I want her carrying it out to the ballroom herself. Personally." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "I have trained servers for the floor. I know you do." Evelyn's smile sharpened. "But I want her out there. Let her carry glasses worth more than her rent. Let her stand in front of 200 of the most powerful people in this city." Her voice dropped, silk over steel. "I want her to see, up close, the world she will never belong to." The words hung in the steam like smoke. Emma stepped forward, flour still on her cheek. "Ma'am, I can do it. I've worked the floor before. I know I'll do it." Every head turned. Sophia dried her hands slowly on her apron, her face unreadable. Emma leaned close, whispering, "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Sophia's eyes were already fixed on the ballroom doors. "I need to see this with my own eyes." 1 hour before the gala, 3 floors beneath the chandeliers, the private wine cellar of the Moretti Grand held a meeting that appeared on no schedule. Victoria descended the stone steps first. Evelyn followed, her heels careful on the old stairs, and waiting for them between the towering racks of vintage bottles, swirling a glass of Bordeaux he had not paid for, stood a man in a charcoal suit with the relaxed smile of someone who believed he owned every room he entered. Richard Coleman. "Ladies," he raised the glass, "to the most profitable night of our lives." "Keep your voice down," Victoria snapped, glancing back up the stairs. The staff are terrified of you." "My dear, that's precisely why this arrangement works." Richard set the glass down on an oak barrel. Now, tonight's numbers. Evelyn tapped her tablet and turned the screen toward him. 200 confirmed guests, 41 registered bidders for the auction. Every name on that list is real, wealthy, and photographed for the society pages. Nobody audits a room full of philanthropists. Beautiful. Richard's smile widened. And that is why I love you, Evelyn. You provide the one thing money cannot buy: respectability. He walked slowly along the wine racks, trailing a finger across the dusty bottles. The auction items are inflated, the appraisals are forged, and the winning bids are already arranged. My associates will donate generously tonight. The money flows into the Coleman Children's Hope Foundation. He pressed a hand to his chest in mock reverence, a charity so pure it would make a saint weep. From there, it moves through the hotel's banquet contracts, catering invoices, event fees. By morning, $3 million of very dirty money will be washed cleaner than that crystal upstairs. $3 million, Victoria repeated. Her tongue touched her lower lip. And my percentage reflects the risk I'm taking? Because I'm the one signing the contracts. I'm the one padding the invoices. If anything surfaces, it's my name, your name, Richard interrupted smoothly, is attached to a hotel whose owner has not set foot in it for 2 years. You skim the wages. You take my envelopes. And no one above you ever looks down. Relax, Victoria. He picked up his glass again and drank. The owner never comes here. That's why this works. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Her reflection fractured across a rack of dark bottles. There's a dishwasher, she said suddenly. A new one. There's something about her face I can't place. Victoria waved a dismissive hand. A temp with no references and no past. Nobody. I've already broken her in. Then put her somewhere I can watch her tonight. Evelyn's eyes glittered. I've already arranged it, actually. Call it entertainment. Richard laughed and raised his Bordeaux. To charity. To charity? The two women echoed, and the clink of their glasses rang against the stone. Above them, in the narrow service corridor that ran past the cellar stairs, Sophia stood pressed against the cold wall, a case of linen napkins in her arms, her pulse hammering in her throat. The heavy door had swallowed most of the conversation. Most, but not all. 4 words had slipped through the crack beneath it. 4 words in Richard Coleman's satisfied voice, and they were enough to confirm everything the anonymous letters had promised. 3 million. Washed cleaner. Sophia closed her eyes. Got you, she thought. At 8 o'clock sharp, the gala began, and Sophia lifted the heavy silver tray loaded with polished crystal. Straight to the ballroom, Victoria ordered from the pass, watching her with the satisfaction of a cat watching a mouse walk willingly into the open. And do try not to embarrass this hotel. Sophia pushed through the swinging doors. The transformation was instant, and it was violent. Behind her, the metallic roar of the kitchen, shouting cooks, the hiss of steam, the smell of grease and burned sugar and sweat. In front of her, a string quartet weaving softly beneath the glow of 7 crystal chandeliers, the perfume of white orchids and old money, laughter that rang like the gentle clinking of ice in expensive glasses. 2 entirely different worlds, separated by a single wooden door. Sophia moved into the golden light, and the golden light moved through her, as if she did not exist. That was the first thing she understood, truly understood, in her bones, in a way that no anonymous letter could ever have taught her. She was invisible, not ignored. Invisible. Ignoring someone requires noticing them first. She placed the first glasses on the first table. Hands heavy with diamond rings reached out and took them without pausing their conversations, without a glance, without the smallest flicker of acknowledgement that the crystal had arrived attached to a human being. She was a mechanism, a serving cart with a heartbeat. At the second table, a silver-haired man was describing his new yacht. At the third, 2 women compared villas in Lake Como. Sophia set down glass after glass, and not one pair of eyes ever rose to meet hers. Then came the 4th table. As she lowered a flute of champagne, her fingers raw and stiff from 400 pieces of polished crystal and the grease traps beneath the main line trembled, just slightly. The glass touched the tablecloth a half-second too hard. A single drop leapt over the rim. Careful! A woman in emeralds jerked back as though acid had spilled. She looked at Sophia for the first time, and her gaze was worse than invisibility. Do you have any idea what you're carrying? That crystal costs more than your entire monthly salary. A ripple of soft, scattered laughter moved around the table. Not cruel laughter, exactly. Worse. Casual laughter, the laughter of people to whom she was not even worth genuine contempt. My apologies, madam, Sophia said quietly. She bowed her head and moved on. From the service doorway, Emma watched with the tray of desserts frozen in her hands. her young face tight with helpless anger, the look of someone forced to watch a wound being made and unable to do anything but witness it. Sophia's hands trembled harder as she crossed to the next table, not from fear, not from shame, from restraint, because every muscle in her body was screaming to set down the tray, to turn her ring outward, to say her true name into the microphone on that stage and watch 200 faces turn to stone. It would take 10 seconds. It would feel like justice, and it would teach her nothing. So she swallowed her name like a stone and kept serving. How many people, she thought, moving unseen between the tables, carry entire worlds inside them and are never once asked? The quartet played on, the chandeliers glittered, and nobody saw the owner of the Moretti Grand Hotel pouring their champagne. At 9 o'clock, the string quartet fell silent, and Evelyn Brooks ascended the stage with a microphone in her hand and a smile that had been rehearsed in 1,000 mirrors. "Good evening, everyone." Her voice flowed through the ballroom like warm honey. "Welcome to the annual Hope and Hands Charity Gala. Tonight, we celebrate generosity, we celebrate elegance, and above all, we celebrate the values that define us as a community." Applause rippled across the tables. Sophia, collecting empty glasses near the head table, felt the air change before the words did, the way animals feel a storm before the first thunder. "And speaking of values," Evelyn continued, her eyes beginning a slow, deliberate journey across the room. "Tonight I want to dedicate a special tribute to the people who make evenings like this possible. Our hard-working service staff." The spotlight operator, cued in advance, swung the beam. It found Sophia. 200 heads turned. 200 pairs of eyes landed on her at once. The woman in the stained uniform, caught in the white circle of light, with a tray of dirty glasses in her hands. "Come, don't be shy." Evelyn's smile widened, glittering and merciless. "This wonderful woman joined us only days ago, and I think she represents something beautiful. Because life, my friends, is wise. Life eventually places each of us exactly where we belong. Some of us were born to lead, to build, to give." She let the pause breathe. "And some of us find our true purpose in humbler places in kitchens, behind mops, washing the dishes of others. And there is such dignity in accepting one's proper place, isn't there?" The applause that followed was thin and uncertain, the sound of 200 people who sensed cruelty but chose comfort. "So tonight," Evelyn announced, "I want to honor that dignity. Come, dear, serve the head table for us. Show our guests the noble beauty of service." Sophia did not move. For one long moment, the entire ballroom balanced on the edge of her silence. She felt the ring against her palm, the diamond pressing into her skin like a voice whispering her real name, and she made a choice that cost more than any empire. She obeyed. She walked to the head table under the full weight of the spotlight, and she began to serve. She poured wine for a senator's wife. She replaced silverware for a bank director. Phones rose from the tables around her, small red recording lights blinking in the dark like a field of predatory eyes. Somewhere to her left, someone whispered a joke. Someone else laughed into a napkin. Evelyn watched from the stage, drinking the moment like champagne. At the service doorway, Emma stood with tears burning in her eyes, gripping the doorframe so hard her knuckles turned white. Sophia straightened the last fork, stepped back, and stood alone in the center of the light chin level, spine straight, hands folded, wearing her humiliation the way soldiers wear armor. "Remember this," she told herself. "Remember every face, every laugh, every phone." And precisely then, at the far end of the ballroom, beyond the last row of tables, the grand double doors began to open. Slowly, both of them. The laughter died first, then the whispers. Because the man walking through those doors did not attend events like this. He owned them. Alessandro Moretti stepped into the ballroom, and the physics of the entire room reversed. He wore a midnight black suit with no tie, no jewelry, no ornament of any kind, because men like him did not need to announce their power. They carried it the way mountains carry weight, silently, absolutely. The reaction moved through the crowd like a wave through water. The nearest guests rose to their feet without knowing why they were standing. Waiters straightened their backs. The first violinist lost his note, and the quartet stumbled into silence, one instrument at a time. Somewhere near the bar, a glass was set down too quickly, and nobody laughed at the sound. 200 of the most powerful people in Chicago, senators, bankers, judges, and every single one of them instinctively adjusted their posture for a man who had not yet spoken a word. Up on the stage, Evelyn Brooks froze mid-sentence. Her microphone hovered in the air. Her celebrated smile remained on her lips, but the life drained out of it, leaving behind something stiff and waxen, the smile of a portrait, not a person. Because Evelyn had built her entire career on knowing exactly who mattered in every room, and the man now crossing her gala had never once, in 15 years, accepted an invitation to anything. At the kitchen door, Victoria Kane went pale as paper. The tray of canapés in the hands of the waiter beside her began to rattle softly. Alessandro walked forward with slow, unhurried steps, and his dark eyes swept the ballroom the way a hawk sweeps a field table by table, face by face until they stopped. On her, on the woman standing alone beneath the chandelier in a stained service uniform, holding a silver tray, husband and wife looked at each other across 200 oblivious people. They did not nod. They did not blink. They did not need to. 12 years of marriage had built a language that required no words, a grammar of glances, a vocabulary of silences, and in the space of 2 seconds, an entire conversation passed between them. Her eyes said, "I'm all right." His eyes asked, "Who?" Hers answered, "Wait, not yet." And his said something that made her breath catch, something dark and quiet and absolute. Every one of them. I saw everything, because he had been standing beyond the doors longer than anyone knew. He had heard the speech about proper places. He had watched the spotlight hunt his wife like an animal. He had seen the phones rise, the mouths laughing behind napkins, and his own wife pouring wine for people who were not worthy of washing her feet. The fury inside him was a living thing, clawing to get out. Instead, Alessandro Moretti did something far more terrifying than rage. He adjusted his cufflinks one precise turn each, and smiled politely at the room. "Please," he said, his voice calm and carrying. "Don't stop the festivities on my account." The ballroom exhaled, and then it swarmed him. Guests abandoned their tables, champagne in hand, orbiting him like planets around a dark sun. "Mr. Moretti, what an honor. We had no idea you'd attend. You must sit with us." He shook their hands with mechanical courtesy, his smile never reaching his eyes, and not one soul in that glittering room suspected the truth. The dishwasher they had laughed at and the man they were bowing to fell asleep every night in the same bed. They seated Alessandro at the finest table in the ballroom, and he ate his dinner like a machine. Knife, fork, chew, nod politely, repeat. Every bite was mechanical, tasteless, devoid of pleasure, because his mind was not at the table. His mind was moving through the room like a surveyor mapping a demolition site. The woman in emeralds, table 4. She had snapped at his wife over a drop of champagne and laughed. Noted. The gentleman at table 9. They had raised their phones to record her humiliation, red lights blinking in the dark. Noted. The general manager by the kitchen door, whose name he now knew was Victoria Kane, and whose face had turned the color of ash the moment he entered. Guilt has a complexion all its own. Noted. And the woman on the stage, Evelyn Brooks, the architect of the spotlight, the one who had spoken the words "proper place" into a microphone while looking at his wife. Especially noted. A younger Alessandro would have already turned this ballroom upside down. The Alessandro of 20 years ago, the boy from the South Side with scarred knuckles and his father's name to defend, would have flipped the head table and let 200 guests learn exactly whose marble they were standing on. But the streets of Chicago had taught him a harder lesson, and they had carved it into him one battle at a time. Rage is loud, and loud is weak. The deadliest weapon a man can carry is patience. So he smiled. He toasted a judge. He complimented the wine, and he waited. At 9:40, he rose, murmured something about a phone call, and slipped out through a side exit. 30 seconds later, in the dim service corridor between the ballroom and the kitchen, a hand caught Sophia's wrist as she passed with her empty tray, and she was already turning, already knowing his touch before her eyes found him in the shadows. For one heartbeat, neither of them was powerful. They were just two people holding on to each other in a hallway. "Tell me," he whispered. The wine cellar, an hour before the gala, she breathed against his ear. "Victoria, Evelyn, and a man named Richard Coleman. He's laundering money through the banquet contracts and a fake children's charity. Tonight's auction is the operation. $3 million. Alessandro's jaw turned to stone. "Then it ends now. I'll bury all 3 of them before dessert." "No." Her hand pressed flat against his chest, over his heart. "Not yet. Sophia, they put you under a spotlight." Like his voice fractured, the first crack in the granite all evening. "I stood at those doors and watched. And if you strike now, we have whispers in a wine cellar. Let the auction happen. Let the money move. Let them sign their names." Her eyes were steady, burning. "Let them finish building their own gallows." A long silence. Then, slowly, his rage folded itself around her logic the way it always did, the way it had for 12 years. Because he had married the only person in the world whose mind he trusted more than his own. He noticed it then. A single tear escaped, and drying on her cheek, the one she had not permitted herself in the spotlight. He wiped it away with his thumb, gently, as if handling something holy. 1 hour, he said. Then Alessandro Moretti straightened his jacket, rebuilt his polite smile piece by piece, and walked back into the light. Back in the kitchen, the storm paused, and in the eye of it, there was a plate of food. Sophia noticed it the moment she set down her tray. A staff meal, untouched, still warm, sliding quietly across the steel counter toward her. Roasted chicken, potatoes, a piece of bread. Behind it, Emma, pretending very hard to be busy with a rack of dessert spoons. "That's yours," Sophia said. "I'm not hungry." Emma's stomach growled loudly, treacherously, in the exact middle of the sentence. She flushed to her ears. "Okay, I'm a little hungry, but you've been on your feet longer than me. Since 5 this morning, I counted." Sophia stared at the plate. Something moved behind her ribs that no ballroom full of diamonds had managed to touch all evening. "Split it," she said, "or I don't eat at all." They ate standing up, side by side at the steel counter, the way soldiers eat between battles, and in that small stolen piece, Emma began to talk quietly, the words slipping out of her like water through a cracked dam, as if she had been holding them for months with no one safe to pour them into. "My mom's in St. Anthony's, 3rd floor. Emma pushed a potato across the plate, her heart. "The surgery worked, but the bills." She laughed, and the laugh had no joy in it. "You know what's funny? I did the math once. If I saved every dollar of my tips for 6 years, I could pay it off. If," Sophia said softly, "if." Emma's jaw tightened. "Victoria takes half. Pooling policy, she calls it, except the pool only ever flows in one direction. Marcus at the grill complained once. He was gone by Friday. She told the agency he stole." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He has 3 kids." Sophia set down her fork. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you look at people like you're actually listening." Emma shrugged, suddenly shy. "Nobody here does that anymore. It's safer not to." "Then answer me one thing." Sophia turned to face her fully. "You've whispered warnings to me since my first day. You offered to take my place in that ballroom. Tonight you gave a stranger your only meal. Victoria punishes people for less than that. Why risk it for someone you don't even know?" Emma was quiet for a moment. When she answered, she wasn't looking at Sophia. She was looking somewhere much further away. "My mother washed dishes for 20 years. Different hotel, same kitchen, same burns on her hands." She rubbed her thumb across her own palm, unconsciously, and in 20 years, nobody ever helped her. Not once. "I used to watch her come home and soak her hands in cold water, and I promised myself." She stopped, shrugged again. "You remind me of her. That's all." The kitchen roared on, around them pans, steam, shouted orders, but at the steel counter, the silence was its own kind of cathedral. Sophia turned away, just slightly, and in the shadow between her body and the wall, she rotated her ring outward one private moment and looked down at the diamond her husband had placed there 12 years ago, a stone worth more than every debt in St. Anthony's Hospital. "Remember this too," she thought, "not just the cruelty. Remember who shared their bread." Then she turned the stone back into her palm and hid it. While the ballroom drank and laughed, the owner of the Moretti Grand moved through his own hotel, like a ghost. He knew corridors these people had never seen. He knew the service stairwell behind the coat check, the maintenance passage that ran beneath the mezzanine, the unmarked gray door on the 3rd floor that opened only to a code his father had chosen 30 years ago. Alessandro had not set foot in this building in 2 years, but a man never forgets a house built with his family's blood. Inside the security office, a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit was already waiting, having entered through the loading dock 20 minutes earlier without appearing on a single camera. Marco, 15 years at Alessandro's right hand, the only man alive who had seen him bleed. "You called. I came." Marco nodded at the wall of monitors. "Though I'll admit, boss, I expected a war council, not a charity gala. Same thing tonight." Alessandro pulled a chair to the main terminal. "Log into the archive. Everything from the last 6 months. Start with the manager's office." Marco's fingers moved across the keyboard, and the hotel began to confess. There it was, time-stamped and pristine. Victoria Kane at her desk, accepting a thick envelope from Richard Coleman, thumbing through the bills before locking them in her drawer. Another clip. 3 weeks later, another envelope. Another. A rhythm of corruption as regular as a heartbeat. "She counts it every time," Marco muttered. "Doesn't even trust the man she's stealing with. pull the banquet contracts, cross-reference the invoices. The numbers scrolled, and the scheme unfolded in columns of quiet poison, catering orders for events that never happened. Florist invoices tripled, auction appraisals inflated by 600%, all flowing through an account labeled Coleman Children's Hope Foundation. Then Marco found the audio. "Boss, the cameras in the kitchen and cellar corridor, they're a newer system. Kane had them installed herself last year. Paperwork says, staff theft prevention." A thin, humorless smile. "She bought the model that records sound." Alessandro leaned back slowly. Of all the weapons in this building, the traitor had built the sharpest one herself and pointed it at her own people, never dreaming it faced both directions. "Play tonight." The cellar. 1 hour before the gala, Richard Coleman's voice filled the small room, smooth and satisfied. "By morning, $3 million of very dirty money will be washed cleaner than that crystal upstairs." Then Victoria's greed. Then Evelyn's silk. "I want her somewhere I can watch her tonight. Call it entertainment." Marco watched his boss's hands. In 15 years, he had learned to read them the way sailors read the sky. They were perfectly still. That was the most dangerous weather of all. $3 million, Alessandro said quietly, laundered through my father's name. He rose and walked to the window overlooking the glittering ballroom below. His father had laid the cornerstone of this hotel with hands still scarred from the docks. He could hear the old man's voice now, rough as gravel and twice as unmovable. "Our name exists to protect people, Alessandro. It is never for sale. Not for 3 million, not for 30. Orders, boss? Freeze nothing. Touch no one. Copy everything to my private server and keep watching." Alessandro's eyes stayed on the golden light below, searching it until he found a small figure in a stained uniform crossing toward the kitchen. "And Marco, put 2 of our best near my wife, close enough to reach her in 10 seconds, far enough that no one ever sees them." Marco frowned. "You expecting trouble?" "I'm expecting rats." Alessandro turned from the window, and something old and cold moved behind his eyes, and rats bite hardest when the ship starts sinking. At 10 o'clock precisely, the lights dimmed, and Evelyn Brooks returned to the stage to begin the crime. "Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. Our charity auction," applause thundered. The auction items paraded across the stage one by one, each with its inflated appraisal, each bit a brick in Richard Coleman's invisible laundry. From his table near the back, Richard watched the numbers climb with the serene face of a man watching his garden grow. A vintage Bordeaux collection, 90,000. A week on a private island, 210,000. His associates raised their paddles on cue, and Dirty Money marched across the stage dressed in a tuxedo, and 200 respectable witnesses applauded it. "And now," Evelyn announced, her voice dropping into reverence, "our final item, the jewel of the evening." 2 attendants carried out a large canvas draped in velvet. Evelyn took hold of the cloth and paused, theatrical as an executioner. She pulled. The painting beneath showed a woman kneeling at the edge of a gray river, washing clothes against the stones, her back bent. Her sleeves rolled, her raw hands caught mid-motion in the cold water. The brushwork was beautiful. The woman's face was turned away, as if even in art, no one had thought to ask her name. "Hands that hold the world," Evelyn breathed into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, look at her. Look at those hands. This masterpiece celebrates the quiet nobility of manual labor, the dignity of those humble souls who scrub and carry and serve, so that the world may shine." She pressed a hand to her heart. Tonight, every dollar honors that sacrifice. Sophia stood in the service doorway, a tray of coffee cups balanced on her palm, listening to a woman who had put her under a spotlight for sport lecture 200 millionaires about the dignity of labor. The hypocrisy was so precise, so surgically perfect, it felt almost artistic. Her hands did not tremble this time. She simply watched, and at the edge of the stage light, her eyes found her husband's across the room. "Now?" his glance asked. The bidding erupted. 100,000, 150, 200, paddles flashed. Richard's men pushed the number higher, and Evelyn conducted the greed like a maestro. 260, do I hear 280? "This is for charity, my friends, 300, called a silver-haired banker. 300,000, going once, going twice, I bid double the highest offer. The voice was not loud. It did not need to be. It fell across the ballroom like a blade falling, and every other sound simply died beneath it. Alessandro Moretti was standing. $600,000, Evelyn stammered. Sold, of course, to our most distinguished guest. But he was already moving. He crossed the floor with unhurried steps, mounted the stage, and lifted the painting from its easel with his own hands. Then he turned to face the room. and the microphone might as well not have existed, because 200 people were holding their breath. "I want to dedicate this purchase," Alessandro said quietly, "to someone special. Someone who knows exactly what these hands endure: the cold water, the long hours, the eyes that look through you." He paused, and his gaze passed slowly, deliberately, across the crowd. "Someone who is inside this building tonight, closer than any of you could possibly imagine. Silence, total, crystalline." Evelyn's face drained of blood so completely her rouge stood out like wounds. And at the back of the room, Richard Coleman slowly lowered his champagne glass, his smile dying by degrees, the smile of a man who has just heard, somewhere beneath his feet, the first soft crack of ice. Richard Coleman was inside the coat check within 90 seconds. Phone pressed to his ear, dialing with a thumb that would not stay steady. Pick up. You," the line connected. "Danny, it's me. I need everything on the Moretti Grand's ownership structure. Now. Tonight. I don't care what it costs." "Richard, it's 10:30 at night now." He hung up and dialed again his contact who ran background checks. "The dishwasher. The temp with the blank file, Solano. I sent you her photo an hour ago. Tell me you have something. Working on it. Give me 20 minutes. Richard lowered the phone and stared at his own reflection in the coat check mirror. "Closer than any of you could possibly imagine." The sentence circled his skull like a shark. It could mean nothing. Rich men made theatrical speeches all the time. It could mean absolutely nothing. The phone buzzed. A text from Danny at the corporate registry. "Ownership consolidated 26 months ago. All shell layers dissolved. Sole owner, A. Moretti. He's not just a guest, Richard. It's his hotel." The floor tilted. Before Richard could breathe, the second text arrived. From the background check. "No records anywhere on Sofia Solano because she doesn't exist. But cross-match the photo. You need to see this. She matches the wife. Richard, she matches Moretti's wife." The phone nearly slipped from his hand. The dishwasher. The dishwasher Evelyn had paraded under a spotlight. The dishwasher Victoria had sent crawling into grease traps. The woman 200 guests had laughed at on camera was the wife of the most dangerous man in Chicago, and they had performed the entire $3 million operation in front of her. In the kitchen, Victoria Kane was coming apart in a different way loudly. She had made her own calls. The temp agency had confirmed what her instincts already screamed. The paperwork was blank because someone powerful wanted it blank. She stormed through the swinging doors and found Sophia calmly stacking clean plates. "You!" Victoria's finger trembled as she pointed. "Who are you? Who sent you into my hotel?" The kitchen froze. Emma's piping bag stopped mid-rose. "Your hotel?" Sophia said quietly. "Blank forms. No references. No address. No past." Victoria was screaming now, past all control, her composure shedding off her like broken glass. "You're a spy, a plant, somebody's little informant, and I promise you, whoever you are, I will destroy you. I know people in this city. I will bury you so deep that no one will ever find the pieces of your pathetic little life." Above her head, in the corner of the ceiling, the small black camera she had personally ordered installed, watched with its unblinking eye, and recorded every syllable in perfect audio. Sophia set down the last plate, dried her hands, and turned. Her voice, when it came, was low and terrifyingly calm. "Are you worried about who sent me, Victoria?" A pause. "Or are you terrified of what I've already seen?" Victoria's mouth opened. Nothing came out, and in her eyes, for the first time, fear replaced fury completely. In the coat check, Richard made his decision. The auction money was frozen mid-transfer. His own accountant had just texted, panicking, that the foundation accounts were suddenly under review. $3 million, exposed. The operation, dead. And when Moretti connected the money to the men who had humiliated his wife, there was no lawyer for this. There was no apology for this. There was only one kind of power that could stand against a man like Alessandro Moretti. Richard scrolled to a number he had sworn he would never call, and pressed dial. It rang twice. "Speak," said a voice like gravel dragged over ice. Richard closed his eyes. "Mr. Romano, it's Richard Coleman. I have information about the Moretti family. That's worth more than everything you own." Across the city, in a warehouse office that smelled of cigar smoke and rust, Victor Romano sat behind a steel desk and listened to a desperate man offer him the world. For 10 years, Victor had watched the Moretti family from the shadows the way a wolf watches a farmhouse. 10 years of losing dock workers, contracts, and territory to a name he had grown to hate more than death itself. Twice he had tested Alessandro's borders. Twice he had carried his dead home in silence. The Moretti Empire had one weakness. Everyone knew it had no weakness. Alessandro Moretti did not gamble, did not talk, did not expose himself. And now this trembling voice on the phone was telling him the impossible. "Say it again," Victor said, slowly. His wife. Richard's breathing rattled down the line. "Sophia Moretti. She's inside the Moretti Grand right now, disguised as a dishwasher. No entourage, no security, nothing. She's been undercover for 6 days investigating the staff. Almost nobody knows. I'm giving you the queen." Romano separated from her king, standing alone on your side of the board. Victor's cigar paused halfway to his mouth. In 10 years of war, he had never once been offered a weapon like this. Not territory, not money, leverage. The one currency that could make an unbreakable man kneel. And what does a gala planner's accountant want in exchange? Protection. "When Moretti falls, I want out alive, with my accounts." A shaking breath. "He knows. Romano, by morning I'm a dead man unless you move tonight." Victor rose and walked to the window, calculating with the cold arithmetic that had kept him alive for 30 years in the business of violence. Take the woman, make one phone call, and Alessandro Moretti, the untouchable king of Chicago, would sign over every dock, every route, every soldier, every brick his father ever laid, for a heartbeat, because that was the flaw in men who loved. They could be bought with a single life. "The service entrance," Victor said. "Cameras?" "Victoria Kane controls them. She's motivated to cooperate. She'll kill the basement feed and get the woman downstairs. She wants to survive this too." Victor crushed his cigar into the ashtray like a small execution, then tell her to make it happen at 11:15. He turned to the 4 men who materialized from the shadows of the office, quiet men with catering uniforms already folded over their arms. Men chosen years ago for precisely such a night. "My best crew arrives in a van marked Lakeshore Catering. In, out, no noise. If the queen is bruised, the man responsible answers to me." He picked up the phone one last time. "And Coleman. If this is a trap, there is no hole in this city deep enough to hide you." 11:06. In the Golden Ballroom, Alessandro Moretti stood near the stage with Marco at his shoulder. A folder of printed evidence in his hand, invoices, transfers, timestamps reviewing the order of the executions to come. "The auction funds are frozen," Marco murmured. "The foundation accounts flagged. Everything's ready. Say the word and we end this in front of everyone." 5 minutes, Alessandro said. "Let the cowards sweat first." 11:09. A white van marked Lakeshore Catering rolled quietly up to the loading dock, and 4 men in pressed uniforms stepped out carrying empty pastry boxes. 11:11. In the security office, one by one, the basement cameras blinked into static. 11:14. In the kitchen, Victoria Kane, pale, sweating, a phone still warm in her pocket, straightened her blazer, walked toward the dishwashing station, and called out in an almost steady voice, "Solano. The auxiliary tables need fresh linens. Basement storage. Now." The basement corridor was longer than Sophia remembered, and tonight, half its lights were dead. The staff called this passage the tunnel, a concrete artery running beneath the ballroom, past the boiler room, down to the storage cages at the far end. Her footsteps echoed off the walls. Somewhere above her, muffled through the ceiling, the string quartet was playing something slow and golden for people drinking $600 champagne. She found the linen cage, unlocked it, and pulled the first box of pressed tablecloths from the shelf. That was when she heard it. Footsteps. Behind her, more than one set and wrong. 6 days in this building had taught her the rhythm of its people. The quick shuffle of overworked waiters, Emma's light hurried skip, Victoria's predatory heels. These steps were none of those. These were slow, spread apart, coordinated. The steps of men who moved in formation. Sophia set the box down without turning around. "Storage is staff only," she said evenly, her hand sliding toward the phone in her apron pocket. "We know," said a voice behind her. "That's why we're here." She spun and threw the box of linens at the first face and ran not toward the stairs. They were already blocking the stairs deeper, toward the boiler room and the service ladder beyond it. A hand caught her shoulder. She drove her elbow back into a jaw with everything her body owned. Felt it connect. Heard the grunt. A second man lunged. She raked the edge of her shoe down his shin and twisted free. 3 steps. 4. She was not a fragile flower. She was a woman who had grown up on the South Side, who had married into a world of wolves and learned its rules. She fought like it. But there were 4 of them, and they were professionals. They took her arms from both sides at once. She screamed once, raw, furious, before a gloved hand clamped over her mouth, and a white cloth followed it, sweet and chemical and cold. She thrashed, she bit. Her hand tore loose for half a second and clawed for anything, and her wedding ring, snagged in a man's sleeve, ripped from her finger. It struck the concrete with a tiny silver sound, almost musical, and rolled a small circle of light wobbling away into the dark as Sophia's eyes lost focus, and her legs went soft, and the tunnel folded into blackness. The last thing she heard was a man's voice, flat and businesslike. Package secure. Moving. Upstairs. At 11:19, Alessandro Moretti stopped speaking mid-sentence. He could not have explained it. A pressure change. A wrongness in the air of his own house. The instinct that had kept him alive through 20 years of wars. The same instinct that had once made him duck a half second before a window shattered. Sophia, he said. Just her name. Then Marco was crossing the ballroom too fast, shouldering past a senator, his face the color of concrete, and Alessandro knew before a word was spoken. The two men we posted, Marco was breathing hard, found in the stairwell. Alive, barely. Basement cameras are dead, they've been dead for 8 minutes. And a catering van just left the loading dock. A beat, boss, she's gone. The folder of evidence slipped from Alessandro's hand and spilled across the marble. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photograph. Sophia. Unconscious. A strip of tape across her mouth. Beneath it, a single message. Every dock, every route, every business your father built, signed over by dawn or you bury a wife instead of an empire. The string quartet played on. And in the middle of the golden ballroom, surrounded by 200 laughing guests, the most powerful man in Chicago stood perfectly still while everything human in his eyes quietly turned to ice. Alessandro Moretti walked onto the stage, took the microphone from Evelyn Brooks's frozen hand, and switched off the music with a single glance at the quartet. Ladies and gentlemen. His voice was calm. It was the calm that made 200 spines go rigid. The gala is over. My staff will bring your coats. Thank you, and good night. A confused murmur. A senator laughed uncertainly, as if waiting for the punchline. Then the ballroom doors opened, and men in dark suits entered, not waiters, not security guards from any agency with a website, and stood along the walls with folded hands, and nobody laughed anymore. The wealthiest room in Chicago emptied itself in 11 minutes, quietly, the way people leave when some ancient instinct tells them the building they are standing in has just become a territory. The businessman had evaporated. What remained wore the same suit and the same face, and was something else entirely. Nobody on the staff leaves, Alessandro said to Marco. And bring me those 3. They were brought to the empty ballroom under the dead chandeliers. Victoria Kane, gray-faced and shaking. Evelyn Brooks, mascara cracking around her eyes. Richard Coleman, intercepted at the parking garage with his car keys still in his hand. Alessandro's men placed them in a row before the stage like exhibits. He did not shout. That was the terrifying thing, the thing none of them would ever forget. He simply looked at each of them in turn, the way a man reads names off a list. Embezzlement, money laundering, extortion of employees. His voice never rose. And 1 hour ago, a phone call to Victor Romano that put my wife in the back of a van. Richard's legs gave out. A chair was pushed under him. Mr. Moretti, it wasn't supposed to. You will pay before the law. All 3 of you. Every camera, every ledger, every recorded word. The prosecutors will receive a gift they will write books about. Alessandro leaned closer, and his voice dropped to something soft as falling snow. But first, I must bring my wife home. Pray, sincerely, that I find her unharmed, because the law is the best thing that can happen to you tonight. He turned away from their weeping. In the basement tunnel, he walked the concrete alone, following the scuff marks, the overturned linen box, the story of her fight written on the floor. She fought, 4 against 1. My girl fought until his shoe stopped beside a small circle of silver. Her ring. He picked it up. The metal was cold. He closed it inside his fist until the diamond bit into his palm, and stood in the dark for exactly 10 seconds, the only mourning he would permit himself tonight. Then, Marco, wake up the whole city. The War Council formed in the security office within the hour. Every loyal man the Moretti name commanded was pulled from beds, bars, and night shifts. Alessandro did not answer Victor's ultimatum. He answered with silence, and with the machine his father had built, turning its full attention to a single question. The answers came fast. From everywhere, traffic cameras. The white lakeshore catering van, running south along the river. A dock worker on the Moretti payroll. Romano's crews had cleared out of their usual warehouse 2 days ago. A cell tower ping from Richard's burner records, repeated calls to a dead zone on the industrial waterfront. Marco pinned the map. 3 data points. 1 intersection. The old Callaway cannery, he said. Abandoned 6 years. Pier 41. Alessandro slid Sophia's ring onto his own little finger, where it stopped at the second knuckle, a small silver vow against his skin. Get the cars, he said. All of them. Pier 41 lay wrapped in fog, and the old Callaway cannery rose out of it like the skeleton of a drowned ship. 3 a.m. The Moretti convoy rolled the last half-mile, dark headlights off, engines whispering, and stopped in the shadow of a rusted crane. 20 men checked their weapons in silence. Marco caught Alessandro's arm at the door of the lead car. Boss, wait for us to clear the perimeter. You go in the second wave. You're worth more than what? Alessandro chambered around without looking at him. A man doesn't send others to bring back his own heart. Marco held his eyes for a moment. Then he nodded once and gave the signal. They hit the cannery from 3 sides at once. The first sentry never made a sound. The second managed half a shout before Marco's men took him down, and then the night tore open. Muzzle flashes lit the fog. Gunfire hammered through the rusted machinery, sparks screaming off old boilers and dead conveyor lines. Romano's crew fell back through the dark in ragged order, shooting between columns of corroded steel, and the Moretti wave came on room by room, catwalk by catwalk, methodical as a tide. Short bursts, shouted names, silence, then thunder again. Deep inside, in a concrete office that smelled of salt and rot, Sophia Moretti heard the war begin and smiled through the blood on her lip. He came. Of course he came. She had been awake for an hour, wrists lashed to a steel chair, working the rope against a burr in the metal frame. Back and forth, back and forth. Her skin had shredded first. She kept sawing anyway, fibers parting 1 strand at a time, her hands slick and raw. Her guard, a thick-necked man with a radio-spitting panic, pressed himself to the doorframe, weapon up, watching the corridor. The gunfire was closer now. 2 rooms away. 1. Fall back! The radio shrieked. They're inside. Fall back. The guard cursed and turned to grab her, to use her, to drag her in front of him like a shield, and Sophia kicked her bound legs sideways with everything she had left, driving the chair into his shins. He stumbled, crashed over her, hit the floor, tangled in the toppling chair. 3 seconds. 4 scrambling up, furious, his pistol swinging toward her face. The doorway exploded inward. He never finished turning. Marco's shot took him off his feet, and he did not get up again. Alessandro moved through the dying battle like a force of nature that had learned to use doors. He was first through every one of them. First into the boiler hall, where 2 of Romano's men threw down their guns and lived. First up the catwalk stairs. First through the smoke, Marco half a step behind him, cursing him and covering him in equal measure, while behind them, floor by floor, the Moretti force swallowed the cannery whole. Romano's crew, the crews of a man who paid for fear, broke and scattered and surrendered in the fog. His empire was dying around him in 20 minutes. Alessandro barely noticed. He was following one thing only the corridor Marco's breacher had marked, the concrete hallway with the steel door at its end, the door behind which his men swore the signal of 2 heartbeats waited. He rounded the final corner. 20 feet, a straight hallway, the steel door, ajar, lamplight bleeding through the gap, and beyond it, visible through the crack, a woman tied to a chair, bloodied, alive. Sophia! Her head snapped up, and from the darkness behind her, pressed against her temple, rose the barrel of a gun, and a voice like gravel dragged over ice. Close enough, Moretti. Victor Romano stepped out of the shadows behind Sophia's chair, and 2 of his last men rose from cover on either side of the room, rifles leveled at the doorway. The great Alessandro Moretti, Victor's voice scraped like rust. 10 years I've waited to see you stand somewhere you don't own. Let her go. Alessandro's gun stayed level. This is between kings. Kings. Victor almost smiled. Then let's speak like kings. One last offer, Moretti. The papers are on that table. Every doc, every route, your father's whole kingdom signed over. Do that, and you both walk out. The barrel pressed harder against Sophia's temple. Refuse, and you'll spend the rest of your life listening to this moment. Sophia's eyes found her husband's across the room. Her lip was split, her wrists were torn and bleeding, and she shook her head, slowly, fiercely. Don't you dare. You misunderstand something, Romano. Alessandro took 1 slow step forward. You think you're holding my weakness. Another step. You're holding the reason I've never lost. Victor's eyes flickered, 1 heartbeat of doubt, and in that heartbeat Marco's team hit the room's rear window with a flash of light and thunder. Fire! Victor roared. The room came apart. The rifles swung toward the door, and Alessandro was already moving, not away from the guns, into them, across the open floor, because every line of fire pointed at the chair, at her, at everything. The first bullet punched into his shoulder and spun him half around. The second tore across his abdomen like a line of fire. He kept coming. He caught the chair and took Sophia to the floor beneath him, his body wrapped over hers, a wall of flesh and bone between his wife and the war. Behind him, Marco's men swept the room. The 2 riflemen went down shooting and did not rise. And then it was only Victor scrambling for the table, for the papers, for the pistol he dropped. Alessandro rose off the floor with blood spreading black across his white shirt and crossed the room like judgment. He caught Victor's wrist before the pistol lifted, broke his grip. The 2 kings crashed into the steel table and went down, and there was no elegance left in it, only the raw, terrible arithmetic of a man with 2 bullets in him and something far stronger than blood keeping him upright. Victor swung. Alessandro absorbed it and answered, once, twice. The third blow laid Victor Romano flat against the concrete, wheezing, finished. Alessandro knelt over him, fist raised, bleeding onto his enemy's face, and Sophia's voice reached him through the ringing dark. Alessandro. Just his name. It was enough. His fist trembled in the air. Then slowly, it lowered. No, he rasped, hauling Victor up by the collar. Prison is longer than a bullet, and my wife deserves to see justice, not vengeance. Marco's men took Romano, bound him, and dragged him out to wait for the police and the file that would end him. Kidnapping, murder for hire, laundering every sin documented, wrapped, and tied with a bow. Alessandro cut Sophia's ropes with shaking hands. She came off the chair and into him, careless of his wounds until he hissed, then careful, holding his face, saying his name over and over like a prayer against the sirens rising in the distance. You're shot, she whispered. Twice. You idiot. You beautiful idiot. Inventory later. He fumbled at his little finger and drew off the small circle of silver. First, this belongs to someone. His hands were unsteady, slick, ruined. He slid the ring home onto her finger anyway, diamond facing outward, facing the world. Never again, he said. The stone stays where everyone can see it. Dawn came up gray and gold over Pier 41, and Victor Romano left it in handcuffs. The police arrived to find the war already over and the paperwork already done. Victor and the survivors of his crew were delivered standing in a neat row, and beside them, on the hood of a squad car, sat a sealed evidence file thick as a Bible. The ultimatum message, the burner phone records, the van, the ransom photograph. 10 years of laundering routes traced in Marco's meticulous hand. Kidnapping, murder for hire, money laundering. A federal prosecutor would later call it the most complete case ever handed to him by a private citizen. You could have put me in the water, Victor muttered as the officers took him. Your father would have. Alessandro stood by the ambulance, his shoulder packed and strapped, refusing the stretcher for the 3rd time. My father built docks, he said. I'm building something else. He watched the cars pull away until their lights dissolved into the morning fog. Then he took his wife's hand, and they went home to the hotel. The arrests at the Moretti Grand happened in daylight, in front of everyone, exactly as Sophia wanted it. No basements, no shadows. The law, arriving through the front doors at 9 a.m, warrants in hand, while the entire staff watched from the lobby balconies. Richard Coleman went first, money laundering, fraud, conspiracy, and a kidnapping. He did not speak. He had not spoken since the cannery fell. Men like Richard only have words when there is still a deal to be made. And there were no deals left anywhere in the world for him. Evelyn Brooks broke in the middle of the lobby. When the handcuffs touched her wrists, the celebrated smile finally shattered, and what spilled out from behind it was ugly and old and human. Do you know what I gave up? She screamed, not at the officers, at Sophia, standing quietly by the front desk in a clean uniform she had chosen to wear one last time. 15 years ago, I sat across from him at a foundation dinner. I did everything right. I was perfect, and he looked through me like a window. And then he married you, a nobody from the South Side. You stole the life that was supposed to be mine. The lobby went silent. 200 employees held their breath. Sophia crossed the marble floor slowly and stopped in front of the woman who had put her under a spotlight. I never stole anything from you, Evelyn. Her voice was quiet, and it carried to every balcony. I built my life with these hands, the same hands that washed your dishes, the same hands that carried your crystal. She held them up, still scabbed at the wrists, still raw from rope and dish soap. You spent 15 years hating a woman you invented. I release you from it. Carry the rest yourself. Evelyn's face crumpled. They led her out weeping, not for what she'd done, Sophia thought, but for the 15 wasted years. Victoria Kane came last. Embezzlement, extortion, accessory to kidnapping read aloud, charge by charge. As she was walked the full length of the lobby, she had ruled through fear, past the front desk clerks whose tips she had stolen, past the waiters she had threatened, past Emma, standing at the kitchen door with flour still on her apron. For 6 days, no one in this building had dared to meet Victoria's eyes. Now, no one looked away. Not one person spoke, not one person jeered. They simply watched her. Steadily, silently, every face she had made, small now standing at full height, and that silence was the heaviest sentence passed all morning. The doors closed behind her, and somewhere above the lobby, sunlight came through the high windows and lay down across the marble like something beginning. That afternoon, every employee of the Moretti Grand Hotel gathered in the great lobby, cooks and clerks, housekeepers and valets, 200 people standing beneath the chandeliers, whispering the same question. The whispers died when the elevator doors opened. Alessandro Moretti walked out with his arm in a sling, having refused a wheelchair for the 4th time that day, and beside him, her hand in his, walked the dishwasher. Except she was not wearing the stained uniform now. She wore a simple gray dress, and on her finger, catching the light of every chandelier at once, sat a diamond turned proudly outward. "Some of you know me," Alessandro said, his voice filling the marble hall. "Most of you know my name. It is carved above the doors you walk through every morning. But none of you truly know the woman beside me. You have seen her scrub your dishes. You have seen her carry your trays. You have seen her humiliated under a spotlight while people laughed." He paused. "Her name is Sofia Moretti, my wife, and the owner of this hotel." The gasp moved through the lobby like wind through a field. Hands flew to mouths. Somewhere near the concierge desk, a housekeeper began quietly to cry. "She chose to become invisible," Alessandro continued, "because it is the only way to see people as they truly are, and she saw everything. The cruelty of those who ruled you through fear, and the courage of those who stayed kind anyway." Sofia stepped forward. "Everything changes today," she said. "Every dollar of stolen wages will be repaid with interest. The management that ruled through fear is gone. The new one will answer to you as much as you answer to it. And starting this month, this hotel establishes the Helping Hands Fund for every employee family facing what too many of you have faced alone." She scanned the crowd until she found a small figure frozen by the kitchen door, flour still on her apron. "Emma Carter. Come here." Emma crossed the lobby on unsteady legs. "Your mother's hospital debts were paid in full this morning," Sofia said gently. "All of them. And this hotel needs a director of staff training, someone who understands that kindness is not weakness. The position is yours." Emma's face broke. I only gave you a plate of food. You gave me proof," Sofia said, taking her hands, "that this place was worth saving." And the lobby erupted, applause and tears and laughter all at once. 200 people who had felt invisible for years suddenly seen, while a wounded man and a woman with dish-worn hands stood together in the center of it all, holding on to the only empire that had ever mattered. And so, dear friends, our story comes to a close, but its lesson stays with us. True power was never measured in territory, money, or fear. It is measured in what we protect and how we treat the people who serve us. The hands that wash our dishes, clean our rooms, and carry our burdens are the very hands that hold this world together. Kindness given quietly in the dark like one shared plate of food always finds its way back into the light. And dignity is never something others can take from you. It is something you carry, even at the bottom of a sink full of dirty dishes. Now we want to hear from your heart. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever been judged by your uniform instead of your soul, like Sofia? Has one small act of kindness ever changed your life, like Emma's plate of food? Share your thoughts and your own stories in the comments below. We read every single one, and your words truly touch us. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. New heartfelt stories await you every single day. Thank you for listening until the very end. We wish you and your loved ones good health, a joyful life, and peace in your heart each and every day. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in the next story.